Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining in today's podcast for Mental. It's your modern mental podcast that is relevant, that gives you tools and techniques, most importantly, because I think there's a lot of resources out there that give you ideas, that just share things, and then it's hard to relate to them. The purpose of our time and space and place today is not, again, to just share those ideas, but give actual techniques for how to follow through. Couldn't be prouder to have a first guest with us, Jimmy Obleda. Jimmy has a special place for me and my experiences, just because when I moved to Southern California, he gave me that first opportunity. And little did I know how good of a coach he was, not just in the Southern California space, but on a national platform at a national level. So Jimmy, would you mind just doing a little intro of yourself, or give our audience an idea of the levels you've worked at, the levels you've played at, and then we'll move on from there.
Cool. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my experiences and my knowledge and anything I provide to help young players and young people be successful, not only in soccer, but in life, and especially in the mental aspect, which I believe is the key component to any person's success. A little bit about myself. My name is Jimmy Obleda. I've had an 8-year professional career, played in Europe, South America, was in the first, the 96 MLS draft, was in the 93 Olympic pool that went to Barcelona, and the 94 U.S. full national team pool, which later I'll talk a little bit about my experience with that and how one of my biggest mental challenges was through that aspect. After I stopped playing, I got into full-time coaching. I coached youth for over 20 years, winning 2 national championships. When national championships actually were the only platform and the only place where you really proved yourself. 2 Dallas Cups. I'm still the only coach in America to win back-to-back Dallas and National Cup championships. Coach at the college level, which I'm currently also coaching right now at Dominguez Hills, assistant coach. And coached the professional level over 4 years, where, again, set some records there, as long as winning streak and as well as biggest game result. Currently, I'm a director at a club, Boca C, in Southern California. And like I said, I coach at Dominguez Hills. I'm assistant coach there. I have 2 masters, one in child development, one in kinesiology, a BA in child development as well, and my USSF A license, and currently doing my pro license. So done a little bit of everything. And like I said, I'm happy to be here to chat with you.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. And to segue, you had alluded to, you have a master's in early childhood development. So words of the day, self-talk. What comes to mind working with youth, working with young adults?
Going to make it through something, or if you're going to throw in the towel. I believe the self-talk, or that voice, is what's going to get you through and give you the energy, the strength, the support that provides you what you need to overcome any challenge, anything that comes, a hurdle that comes in your path. But also it could be the voice that doesn't give you the strength, that pushes you away, that makes you have every excuse in the book and blame everyone else as to why you can't or won't be able to do it. So self-talk to me is very, very important, because it's what determines the direction you're going to take in a simple decision, a decision of the moment, or a decision that's going to set you for the rest of your life.
I can agree more. I want to hit that home and maybe just come at it a little bit different angle, but not much. And it's the most important voice for our listeners out there that you'll ever have in your life. And I think so many people, and you alluded to this, of finding excuses and reasons not to do something, and how we convince ourselves, I can't go chase that dream, or I can't go pursue that situation. And we talk ourselves out of so many things. But like you said, we can also talk ourselves into so many decisions and moments and situations. Ultimately, it's your responsibility to gauge, what does that voice say to you? Because yes, it may be influenced by friends and family, but ultimately it's dictated by you. And I think a lot of people just unfortunately don't take that responsibility, or maybe know the value and that opportunity that they do have, because they do lean into other opinions so often. Well, my 2 closest friends told me I probably shouldn't do that, or I couldn't do that, so I'm not going to do that. And then you have that term that we all unfortunately live with to some degree, is regret. I should have done this 5 years ago. I totally should have pursued that, because I was in a space that I had that mentor, I had that support, but I was talked out of it, and I think that's such an important piece. I'll share a personal piece real quick with our relationship. Moving out to Southern California and just putting feelers out there, saying, who can give me an opportunity? Luckily enough for me, you were the one to say, hey, I got something for you. And I can also remember you also didn't just say, "Hey, Nick, what do you need? I can help you with anything." It was, "I can help you get your foot in the door." And now it's up to you to maximize and make the most of that situation. And that ballooned pretty quickly for me. But again, it was taking that first step mentally to say, "Can I do this?" And telling yourself, "I can cross a new line. I can create a new story for myself," versus putting up walls quickly based on other people's opinions. Anything else that comes to mind when you think of self-talk?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, not to make it about you, but when you did come, I mean, if you remember, and again, the mental aspect of it was, look, it's not going to be easy here. These were their expectations, there's challenges. You have to rise to the occasion. And again, like we talk about, so many young men and women right now will say, well, that's a bit much. That's more than I want right now. I want to be comfortable and I want to be told what I want to hear, as opposed to saying, hey, Nick, that's good, but that needs to be better. And I think that's where the mental aspect, that voice becomes so important, where when you're able to talk to yourself and that self-talk says, well, this person's giving me the support that I need because he or she wants me to be better, and not it's, well, no, and making every other assumption as that, assuming just that it is what it is. This person wants you to be better. And I think that's a perfect example for yourself when you came and worked for me those years that you did was, hey, look, I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to open up doors for you, but you have to step in and these are the things you have to be better at. And these are things you're very good at. And I don't think there was a moment you ever, I don't want to say questioned it, but there was never a moment where you weren't like, okay, receptive to the feedback and receptive to the criticism, because that's what it is sometimes. And again, that's why you've been successful and you've taken every aspect of your career in the sport. And, here we are now.
Yeah. So would you mind sharing a story? Let's navigate there and stay on the topic of self-talk. Dated back to your playing days. You said you had an eight-year professional career. How did you navigate your self-talk when maybe you didn't have that supportive coach? Right? Because I think a lot of listeners can relate to that. It's like, well, okay, it's one thing to have positive self-talk, but when you have someone beating you down, or maybe not beating you down, but not willing to pick you up and push you along, how did you navigate through your 8-year professional career from that aspect?
Well, I think the privilege and the blessing that I had, that I always had a parents that were always very, they, they, when I fell down, they didn't pick me up, but they said, get up, right? They never grabbed me by my hand and picked me up. They said, hey, come on, you can do it. So from a very young age, I understood that it was never, nothing I ever wanted was going to be easy. From a very young age, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. From as far as I can remember, 8, 9 years old, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And I learned through sacrifices that to be a pro, you're going to have to go through some tough moments. I grew up in New York. My parents moved out to California when I was 15, because in those years, you could play here 12 months a year. In New York, you could only play 3 months out of the year. My parents showed me that through sacrifices, nothing's guaranteed, but you can get closer to where you need to be and where you want to go. Having that kind of mentorship and role models from my parents were immigrants. They came to this country, with nothing, and they were building a family. So you had those role models that had to go through some difficult moments that pushed them to be successful. So you see those things growing up. So as I started having coaches, a lot of people will ask, I mean, I was very short when I played. It wasn't until I went overseas that they gave me, I kid around, the best description was the Messi injections, where I grew. But I was a very small kid, and I had people saying, you're too small, you're never going to make it. Technically, I was very good, but physically, I wasn't there. But again, I controlled what I could control, which was getting better as a soccer player, and the mental aspect of saying, like, no one's going to tell me I can't make it. And I've had those coaches, I'm telling you. And then when we moved to California, I had coaches that would say, yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it. And you just almost put it behind you. You almost like use it to fire you up, use it to kind of say to you, no, I'm going to prove this person wrong. Or even the ones that you say, use that part saying, look, listen, you have to get better at these aspects. Cause I also had that, look, you're not good enough, but they also gave me like, you have to be better at these aspects to be successful. And again, it was the mental part that was just like, I wasn't going to give anyone the satisfaction of telling me I couldn't do it. My self-talk and my voice in my head was, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to do it. There was times, again, my dad would say to me, hey, I'd be saying, hey, as a young kid, you want to go and hang out with your friends and you want to go do other things. And my dad would say, look, you have these choices. You decide what you want to do. if you don't, just think somewhere someone is training. So you don't have to, you can go play with your friends right now, but somewhere someone is training. When that opportunity comes, he's going to beat you because he had an extra day or whatever it was. So that kind of, again, that always built into my head, and always constantly reminding myself that I had to do more. And then when I went overseas, I had an opportunity to go play college here. Duke University was my first choice. I was going to go play there, and I ended up going to overseas at 16. Again, in those years, there weren't many Americans playing overseas. And it was tough, because they didn't look at us, or look at me, at least, as a soccer player. So I learned, I had to earn my spots, and my spot was on the bench in the beginning, just getting in the roster of 18. And in those years, you were only allowed two subs. So, if you were on the bench, you had a chance, right? And then you had to wait. And if your team was winning, you might get in. If your team was losing, you would definitely get in. But if you were winning, you might get in, or the coach would close up with defenders. But just this all to say that being on the bench taught me that, you have to be strong. So when my moment came, hey, now's my moment. I have to do it. And I don't get a second chance. So it's just that constant reminder of just having to grind through it. And part of the journey is the grind and the mental strength that you have. And that pushed me on until when I went to Europe, when I went to Mexico, when I was in the A-League here. And then when I went into the MLS draft, then when I had to stop playing, I had to retire. That was the other one where it's like, okay, what's your next step? And like I tell a lot of my players and players I've had is, I've had this 8-year career and it's all I knew. But a lot of people don't realize after your 8 years, if you don't have a plan B, what are you going to do? You have to, that's where, again, the mental aspect of being a soccer player and everything I grew up with helped me kind of go, okay, now what's your next step? And it allows you to have that process of like, I'm not in the place I want to be right now at that moment, but I'm going to get to where I need to get to. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to get there.
I just want to stress the importance of a couple nuggets that stick with me that I hope our audience picked up on. And that is, you're focusing on what's next. I think so many people choose to ask themselves, why does this always happen to me? Why doesn't that work for me? And just be careful, because those questions are dating back to the past versus your question is framing something to the future.
Well,
What can I continue to grow with? What's going to be that next step for me? And your focus is in a different place. Right? So I think an important nuance for our audience listening is exactly that, because
yeah.
that's a technique that any of you, I don't care if you're 12 years old, 18 years old, 25 years old, listening to this, that's an actual technique that you can apply in your daily life. And it's just a small change, but it's going to make a dramatic impact because it shifts what you choose to focus on. Absolutely.
Well, I want to add on something, because we're all human beings, right? And we're not perfect, and we're striving to always be better. I'm not going to lie. There's moments where I've had setbacks in my career as a player and as a coach where you go, why is this happening right now? It's normal human reaction to it. But it's how long do we stay there becomes the question. How long are you going to stay in that place of saying, why is this going to happen to me? I tell players that I coach, yeah, at this moment, it's terrible. At this moment, it feels like the end of the world, but we always have tomorrow. And tomorrow is a new day, and it's a new beginning. And what you do tomorrow is going to dictate what you do the day after. And I'll just add that in 93, I got called into the the full national team. They were getting ready for the Copa America. 3 days before, I broke my 5th metatarsal training. This was an opportunity of a lifetime to get called. That's when Bora Milutinovic was the coach of the full national team. I break my foot. I go into camp and I can't train. And Bora says to me, well, we'll keep following you. Because in those years, I was playing in Uruguay, and those years, it wasn't like social media nowadays where you could post pictures and videos and everything's up to date. You had to wait a month to send the VHS tape through the mail. I wasn't called again. I had that moment to say, okay, what do I do now? And what I did was got healthy, got better, and continued with another 4-year professional career. You cry at that moment and you're upset, but you keep going. That's all you can do. Life's about continuing and continue to push forward when things are difficult.
Let me stick on your story for one last piece of it. And that is, as you're traveling abroad, I think so many people immediately think, wow, what a cool experience. You're playing professional, you're playing overseas. My butt in there is, and tell me what this was like, the team dynamic. In all reality, when you're on the field, you're taking somebody else's paycheck. You're from America and you're trying to make a living yourself. How easy or how difficult was it for you mentally to work through that dynamic of you're an outsider and you're trying to do what's best for you and your family. Did people isolate you, or were they welcoming in that professional environment? Like, hey, come in. It's not a big deal. What was that like for you mentally?
I think you have a little of everything. You have the guy, the forward, that he knows you're coming for his position, who is going to be a little bit resist and against you, right? And you're going to have his buddy who's a center back that every time you get the ball in training is going to kick the kick you into the trees and into the light. And then you have the guys that you build a bond with, a relationship with, that they go, this American kid is not so bad. So you have the full spectrum in a locker room, right? One of the biggest things, the mental part, was walking into locker rooms. I mean, here we don't have locker rooms, right? We drop our bags off on the side of the field, we play, and we go home, right? It's that what a locker room, the codes and the ethics and the values and what that looks like inside, and how you have to navigate through that mentally. You want to make sure that you're even with everyone, you're on the same page with everyone, right? So it's that mental part in there that you have to be smart enough to kind of navigate through. But I had everything. I had everything from the guy who couldn't stand me because I was trying to take his position, to the guy who became one of my best friends. So I think it's the biggest part is adjusting mentally to what people think being a professional athlete is glorious and glamorous, and everyone's making Messi and Ronaldo money. The reality is not that. The reality is everyone's going to make Jimmy Obleda money, enough in your career to maybe buy a home, right? Or enough to live and enjoy those 8, 10, whatever years of your career. Are you mentally strong enough to deal that? I mean, I'll give you a mental test that when I first moved to Uruguay, I was an American kid, had everything, had my own bedroom, my own Nintendo, my own TV, to live in a room with 4 other guys with beds side by side in below zero, freezing cold weather. And these guys are sleeping in their underwear. And I'm coming from California and I have a beanie, turtleneck, hoodie, thermal underwear, sweats, 2 pairs of socks, a sleeping bag, and a cover. And I'm not exaggerating. And the guys are looking at me, and I'm having to get up and deal with that. You know what I mean? I mean, I didn't have people cook for me. I mean, my mom would cook breakfast. All that. Again, there's moments you go like, wow, is this really worth it? Do I really want it? And it goes back to tomorrow's the next day, next play, growth mentality, saying, hey, this is making me better and it's pushing me to the next moment. And can I make it to the next day? And eventually the next day you find out to be the next month becomes the next year, and you just become resistant and overcome all those challenges that before were challenges.
Absolutely. And speaking of growing and changing, let's change that topic and mold it into a question from our audience. And it's this. Jimmy, I'll give you the floor first to give your take. What are strategies to boost self-belief and staying positive, especially after making a mistake?
Well, I think it's, again, short-term memory. It's over. It's done with. You made the mistake. What do you do after you make the mistake? Do you make a mistake, lose a ball? What do you do after? Go get it or track back. What's the next positive action you can make that's going to have you forget or have everyone forget? Because that's the other part. Because that's if you make a big mistake, the embarrassing part where now you become the self. Oh man, I messed up my team or I hurt my teammates. It's no, I care enough about myself and my teammates, and I'm going to go, all right, move on. And it's that constant next play inside, almost constantly, again, that voice, that self-talk that we talk about, going, okay, let's go. Like, don't think about it. Let's go. And I think if you talk to yourself enough like that, and in those moments that you react in a positive manner, it eventually starts overtaking the other one where it's like, oh no, or my coach is yelling at me. It's just go. You missed the shot, get back, next play. You lost the ball, win it back. So it's that constant next play mentality and next play, next one up type.
Absolutely. I'll piggyback on that idea and use an analogy of a bouncy ball, right? And you think of a bouncy ball, when it hits something hard, comes up against something hard, it just goes right back, right? And think of, for our listeners out there, can you have that type of reaction where, as Jimmy just said, it's just a moment in time, boom, but you're not focused on that one moment. You can pick it apart after the game, after the training session, after the situation has passed. But where's your focus and where's it going next, right? And just wanted to maybe paint a little bit different way to say the same thing, because I think So for some people, it's hard to relate to that because they do feel stuck. So let me paint that audience question with one more to make it more compounding, Jimmy. You had 4 bad games in a row as a player, and you know your starting spot's on the line, or maybe you've gone to the bench. How do you come back from that? Because that next play for you got you on the bench. How do you stay positive mentally? How did you stay positive mentally through those types of moments?
Well, I think again, there's sometimes I sat on the bench. I mean, I had a coach that for 6 months didn't play me, and they fired the coach, and then the next coach comes in and he gives me an opportunity. So for 6 months, I sat there, would play 5 minutes, come in, with the extra whatever the leftover minutes, and I'd play on the reserves and stuff. So, again, I think that's the part where you have to be confident enough in yourself and kind of say like, and be honest with yourself. And I think that's sometimes where that mental aspect, we lose it because we don't want to be honest with ourselves and say, yeah, I lost it because I haven't done well, but that doesn't take away who I am. And what do I have to do to get that place back, that job back, that starting position? Not say, oh, he's playing favorites or he likes him or he doesn't like me, whatever it is, or whatever we want to tell ourselves, right? Be honest, going, yeah, I've had some blinders the last few, shocking games, the last 3, but hey, I'm going to keep working and I'm going to keep grinding through and I'm going to stay after. What do I need to work on finishing? I'm going to stay after. What I need to work on free throws, whatever it is that is not allowing you to be there, right? From a technical, tactical standpoint, physical standpoint. Now you get the mental aspect that says, okay, let's get at it. Let's work at it. Let's watch ourselves. Let's watch ourselves in film. So be realistic, being honest, right? That it's not a good situation you want to be in, not a situation that you're happy about, but how do you get yourself out of it is the key.
Yep.
Right. And not worry about, I don't say worry about it, but not dwell on it and find every excuse as to why you're not. It's okay. I'm going to find every reason as to why I'm going to get it back.
Brilliant. For our audience out there and for my guests that I have on the podcast, I'd like to take this time to put Jimmy on the hot seat. And Jimmy, if you would just give the first response that comes to mind in as few words as possible for these questions. You ready?
Yes, sir.
As a player, what was your favorite pregame pump-up song growing up?
Ooh, easy. Eye of the Tiger, Survivor.
As a player, what's one of the hardest things you dealt with on the field?
Missing an easy goal.
Now related to today, shifting into your coaching, how do you mentally reset after a tough moment?
Deep breath. I take a deep breath and kind of go, let's go. You got this. That's my self voice and my self phrase. You got this.
Okay. Sticking with today and where you are, what's your favorite mental exercise to boost focus?
Ooh, I love it. My morning meditations where it's kind of like 15 minutes of just sitting and just kind of getting in my thoughts and building my positive thoughts and focus of the day.
Perfect. Last but not least, what's a hidden talent or hobby outside of your profession?
Ooh, people wouldn't know this, but I play guitar. I'm a romantic for the guitar.
So for our audience out there, now we're going to take time to give some final thoughts. And Jimmy, here's our quote of the day. Football is played with the mind. Your feet are just the tools. The great Pirlo mentioned that once upon a time. Thoughts on that based on today's topic?
It's the same thing as Bill Beswick said. The mind is the engine. The body is the vehicle. And what that means is what I've always said, and more so in today's time. I'll finish with one of these points that the mind today, if you are mentally strong, mentally, you got a mentality, you're going to make it in whatever you do, because everything will follow that. Nothing, you'll be bulletproof. Nothing that happens to you will affect you to the level that you're going to quit. If you are mentally strong, that mental fortitude, that mental toughness in today's world, more than ever in the history of time, because everything will follow you behind. Everything will be behind you and you'll get through anything.
I'll just close things off with staying in that same lane, which is, I think any of our jobs, whether it's a sport you play, a profession you have, is to make yourself as valuable as possible. Ultimately, I think a good question is, how do you make yourself irreplaceable? How can you make yourself so valuable? It's like, I don't want to take him off the field. I don't want to take her off the field. I don't want to take her off my team. How can you make yourself so valuable? But it comes back to that mentality piece. Doesn't matter whether you're playing a sport, working a job, whatever it is, that tool alone will, like Jimmy said, it will get you through your toughest moments and it'll help you continue to grow and not just get complacent. And I think that is the biggest tool that it's probably one of the harder ones to measurably or just measure in general, right? It's like, oh, I'm more mentally tough this year. That's where the honesty comes in. And that's where it takes you being proactive as our listeners to surround yourself with voices and resources like this one to help you build those skill sets. And then now it's your ability to apply it, right? And the last piece of it is you applying it consistently. Because I think a lot of people dabble and a lot of people will try new things. It falls back in your lap, right? As the listeners say, what are you going to do with it? Right? We get so much knowledge. We expose ourselves to so much information. What are the key ones to really hang on to and go do it? Because nothing's going to beat your action. Nothing's going to overrun that.
I do want to make a comment on that. Sport, whatever sport is kind of the vehicle in which we work in, right? And that's how we connect with players and with young men and women. But the mental aspect that they learn affect them the rest of their lives because they're all going to be adults someday. They're all going to be an adult. But I believe my thought I've always believed, I've always said is that mentally you will get through anything in a relationship, in a job. If you can, through these moments as you're doing, as you can build that mental fortitude, things won't affect you as much the older you get. You'll lose a job. That's normal. You might have an argument with your significant other, right? You might lose a person you love. It's how do you move forward from that? And how do you continue, again, your significant other, can you get through it and continue to be married for another 20, 30, 40 years? Can you lose a job and bounce back because you have mouth to feed? Can you lose a loved one and go, okay, I got to provide still for my family? So I think that's where I have always believed in the mental aspect. And again, I commend you for what you're doing because I think more than ever nowadays with today's youth, the mental aspect has to be directed and has to be addressed more than ever.
Absolutely. Well, don't want to take too much more of the time of our listeners. So Jimmy, thank you so much. I wouldn't have it any other way in terms of having someone be the first. Your story is brilliant and your perspective is second to none. So thank you for taking the time. Last thing, Jimmy, people are just like, that was awesome. Where can I find more of Jimmy at?
Follow me on Instagram. It's The Real Jimmy O. You can follow me on there and on Facebook, James Obleda.
Perfect. Jimmy, thank you again. Listeners, until next month, this is this month. Checking out for now. Take care.